Yeah, so this is second or third time that it's passed the House and it's still sitting at the Senate floor. And so it has to also pass the Senate for it to even go into law. So right now it's just kind of one step forward. If it does pass the Senate, the Safe Banking Act is definitely a step in the right direction when it comes to cannabis banking, but it's not the solution. It's not the answer. It's not going to get us into major banks. And the reason why it can't, the main thing that I read from the Banking Act is it gives banks a little bit more comfort and guidance on what it takes to bank this industry, but it does not allow them to do. So cannabis is still federally illegal, which means there's no interstate commerce. So that means you can't, sell from California to Nevada. Even though both states are state legal, you can't cross those borders with your product. And so when it comes to banking, big banks like Bank of America, Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, those are interstate commerce. So that means you're going to be banking and they don't have a closed loop system to where whatever money you spend at Wells Fargo stays in the state of Nevada or stays. It's an interstate banking system. So then because it's federally legal, you still cannot run your cannabis business on a bank that's an interstate bank. And so it's giving us a step forward, but we still need a lot more federal legalization, descheduling of the substance, something like that will be what will be needed in order for the banks to actually feel comfortable and bring in these cannabis clients. And then even on top of that, just those interstate regulations, it still takes a lot to bring on a cannabis client. They have to bring in more regulation into their bank, more staff. They have to, be able to count all this cash. And so a lot of banks aren't just going to jump on board right away because it costs a lot of money to implement everything that needs to be implemented in order to bank these companies. And so, we're going in the right direction, but we still have a long way to go. What we have for cannabis now, and with the Safe Banking Act, we may open a few more credit unions and smaller banks that are within that legal state, and provide the cannabis companies a little bit more options for banking, but still, it's tough. I deal with a lot of clients, and we're dealing with these smaller banks, and we're dealing with large sums. We're dealing with tens, 20s, 30s of thousands of dollars, and these small banks have to manually process each transaction. And there's times where transactions went through and a zero was missing, which makes a big difference between what the amount is. And like, wait, well, this would have been, 10,000, it was 1,000. So there's times where, things are being done manually and you have to keep on top of the banks. And then just making payments is difficult. You can't just go in and do Zelle or do something really quick, a transfer with your credit union. You have to send in the document, email them the invoice, copy all these different people on it, wait for them to approve it, wait for them to manually process it, and then send it, and then double check that it was sent properly. So there's just a lot of complications when it comes to banking. Luckily, we do have some banks that will bank us, but still we have a long way to go. Yeah, so first of all, they would need to understand whatever the new state is. So if they're in California and they're trying to go to Nevada, they need to understand the regulations in Nevada. They need to understand if they need to be a Nevada resident, what are the requirements, the application process, and go through all of that. And then they just need to have things in place. A lot of times they require that you have real estate already established and in place and ready to go even before you start the licensing process, which becomes really costly because you're paying rent on a product that you can't put into service until your license is approved. So they need to, get those types of things in place. If they need to have state residency, they need to either be one or establish residency or partner with somebody who is a state resident. And then they have to understand that even though it's the same business and the same brand, they can only source their product within that state. So they may have, a huge operation in California where they have 5 dispensaries and they have really good economies of scale. They're able to get product at a cheaper price with the suppliers in California. Well, they're not able to use those same suppliers in Nevada. They've got to establish new relationships in the state of Nevada with suppliers here that are growing the product that they can buy their product from. So it's just starting over, and you have to rebuild everything, and it has to be specific to that state. And even down to the POS system that you're using in California may not work in the state of Nevada, because every single state has different regulations, and those POS systems are state specific. So we're getting a lot better now. When I started in the industry, it was very scarce, but now a lot of these states are deploying into several states. A lot of these POS systems are able to upload all of the regulations and operate their systems in multiple states. So sometimes that works, but it doesn't work every single time. So they almost have to build the business from the ground up in that new state. They have their branding and things in place, but when it comes down to banking, POS systems, sourcing product, getting your license approved, all the state regulations, they have to start over from the ground up in that new state.